Generations Bank has been serving the financial needs of the Finger Lakes region since 1870. Generations combines the best of modern banking with dedication to the local community. Visit them at mygenbank.com. Generations Bank, member FDIC, and equal housing lender.
Opening day 2024 is here. Spring turns over and we are ready to begin another new baseball season here on Concrete Jungle, a New York baseball podcast. Paul Russo and Kyle Evans here with you once again, our third season of CJ. Kyle, how about it? Time sure does fly.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem like that, but yeah, great day. Looking forward to, not just the Yankees and Mets. Well, the Mets are rained out today, but, all the other games that are going to take place throughout the day. Kind of sucks that we don't get a game until 3 o'clock.
Right.
But the rain, unfortunately, made it that way.
Yeah, which is pleasantly surprising to me because the Mets, as we know, got preemptively rained out yesterday. They made that call, and then the Phillies did as well. They're home at Philadelphia. And then Baltimore's home as well, which you would think that they would be potentially in the way of that, but weather works in mysterious ways, obviously there. So they remain on only, like you mentioned, though, kind of sucks. One of those things where there's a lot of later games today, I realize, on the schedule this year. I know this is more of maybe a broader topic that I didn't necessarily have planned, but yeah, I didn't realize until really looking at it, there was only, really a couple of, true day games today, and then everything else is later on. Usually I feel like in years past it's been more day games on opening day than night games. It kind of feels like the inverse this year. Kind of weird.
Yeah, looking here, we have 8 4:10 starts.
Yeah.
And then 1 7:35 start, and then 3 night games at 10:10. So not exactly how I'd want it based on my setup because I have so many options.
Right.
But yeah, regardless, I'll have most of the games on and super excited.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. I can't wait either. Let's jump right in here. We're gonna do more of our expectations for the season for both teams, and then preview the weekends as well. But a couple news and notes to kind of touch on here. Let's begin quickly with the Mets. Their note, kind of a shorter one of sort. Obviously, we've been monitoring the Kodai Senga thing here with the strained posterior capsule in his right shoulder. I always have to double check to make sure I got that right. But as we know, he's been predominantly what I'm going to call shut down here for the better part of spring training. The reason why I say that is because in the past couple days he has started his throwing program. He's been throwing flat grounds on the outfield grass at Citi Field now for the past couple days. Still, though, the timetable of sort, even though there's no true timetable, this is probably going to look like at least a 6-week ramp-up type deal. Quasi-spring training, as I call it, as everybody else will call it. So mid-May is still the early point on this that we would probably see him back at all. I'm going to dare say and venture a guess that it will be deeper than that, say June, probably beginning part of June to mid-June of sort. The Mets aren't going to rush him back, albeit maybe they don't have the firepower of pitching, say, that they had the past couple years going into opening day. They may have slightly more depth at the starting rotation than they have in the past couple years. It's kind of weird them phrasing it that way, but I don't want to give too much away while we get to the expectation of the season with their starting pitchers and rotation depth-wise. But, they have a couple guys stockpiled at Syracuse even, stashed away at the moment, so they aren't going to rush him back. They probably won't even keep him on the typical 5-day cycle. The Mets, we might be talking about, when Senga comes back, a 6-man rotation for the Mets even, the way it seems. But if there's some positive news, Mets fans, is that Senga is throwing, albeit flat ground and beginning his build-up, but he is throwing. It appears as though the timetable is getting set for his return, and not all is lost on this season for Kodai.
Yeah, he went about a month without throwing. Obviously, he's going to basically need a full spring training. So like you said, your timelines are, I would say, pretty accurate. And, that's assuming no setbacks either. We don't know how this is going to respond. And, obviously, if you're a Mets fan, you hope at some point he gets back. He was the ace of the staff last year, had a great season, just a great pitcher overall. But, yeah, I think the Mets do have some nice depth this year. The guy that I'm really interested to see is Luis Severino. If he stays healthy, we've seen he can be one of the best in the game. And, Jose Quintana had a pretty good second half last year. You don't know what you're really going to get from Sean Manaea, I guess,
Right.
Adrian Hauser. And then I thought it was interesting that Tyler McGill made the rotation over Jose Buto, who had an excellent spring training, had under a 1 ERA at one point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure really what went into that decision, but regardless, I think they have some good pieces that could hopefully keep them above water until Kodai Senga gets back.
Yeah, and that's what I meant. I like they don't have that firepower. I mean, by go back like I mentioned a couple years ago, say with DeGrom or even last year with Scherzer, Verlander, that type of deal. But it feels like this year they just have more options available to them as they have in years past. So jump over to the Yankees here quickly. Like I mentioned, just a couple news and notes collectively before we jump into our expectations and opening day stuff. John Birdie acquired from the Marlins. So this was a depth thing for the Yankees, I feel like, more than anything else, with DJ LeMahieu being on the mend with a bone bruise in his right foot. 3-team deal. I'm not surprised here that it ended up being a 3-team deal once I kind of initially saw from you, Kyle, and a couple other guys what was kind of happening here a little bit. Ben Rortvedt heading to the Rays in the 3-team deal. The Marlins get a couple of minor leaguers. John Cruz, formerly number 28 prospect for the Yankees, off to Miami. Miami also getting outfielder Shane Sazaki from the Rays, an outfielder in the minors. Birdie, 34 years old, /294, 344, and 405 last year in 2023. Does have a club option for next year in 25. Led the league in 2022 with stolen bases at 41. He's an interesting little player. He's not true a super utility role. He will be third baseman. Can play some short if you need him to, as well as second base. I think the Marlins even had him in the outfield at one point. So predominantly infield. I wouldn't quite put him in that super utility role that some other guys kind of fill. All that being said, I feel like the Yankees probably kind of need to do the deal for the sake of depth. They don't have great necessarily infield depth going into this year like they say maybe did last year in a way. Kind of, not to go back to this drum, if you will, but kind of makes you wonder and wish, like, damn, maybe bringing IKF back on a one-year deal of sort would have been nice in this situation. But nonetheless, kind of solved a couple different issues, right? Rortvedt was the odd man out at catcher. Out of options as well with the minor leagues. So I saw one thing with him involving like him being on the Yankees for like the first week, because you have to keep the rosters intact for a week or something like that. I forget what the exact number of days is that you have it set from opening day before maybe dropping him on waivers and hoping he clears. But you look around Major League Baseball, he would have been claimed in a minute. Catching depth at Major League Baseball level this year is not great. There's a reason why there's certain catchers that we'll see from other teams throughout the year this year still lingering around. Like, not a knock on the guy, right? But like Austin Hedges is still in the league. Is he going to be Cleveland's actually opening day catcher today? He might be. It's kind of crazy. Although I'd go Bo Naylor, but that's just me personally. So, but either way, Rortvedt was the odd man out, and this obviously helps. I mean, Oswaldo Cabrera, not the best spring, as we talked about off air quite often, Kyle. And for John Birdie, it gives you an option for a guy that you can have under control for next year. It's a pretty cheap contract. I think it's like $2.75 million or something like that for this year on his deal. So not bad for a guy who puts the ball in play, quick, my type of player, and gives you a little bit of versatility on defense.
Yeah, I thought this was a great deal. Like you said, Ben Rortvedt was out of options. They were going to lose him anyway, so they turned him into, getting John Birdie. And John Cruz is a 19-year-old guy who I don't think has made it above rookie ball.
You never know what's going to happen with those guys anymore.
Yeah, so I thought this was a great deal. not only can he, start here and there and kind of platoon with Oswaldo at third before LeMahieu gets back, he's just a great option off the bench too because he can give you that speed, a good at bat. You see his on base percentage is pretty good. So obviously, I'm hoping he starts today because the lefty Framber Valdez is on the mound. But as Boone said, travel might be an issue, so I'm expecting Oswaldo there today. I just don't like the matchup very well. But yeah, just I like the deal, and I was a little surprised at first that they were talking about Ben Rorvet making the team. I didn't understand why they were going to roll with three catchers. That didn't make any sense to me. So great deal, and we'll see how this works out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You mentioned today with opening day. I know online they still have Birdie listed as the opening day third baseman, but also underneath that line, it was very explicit in noting that like travel is an issue at the moment, trying to get Birdie to Houston. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think with that we can kind of jump in here with expectation because we'll begin with the Yankees on this one. Do a quick rundown of this roster for both the Yankees and the Mets that I'm about to say for each when we get to them aren't official. They aren't locked in yet. These are, though, the latest depth chart lines that each team has provided and kind of going from there. So catcher for the Yankees, Jose Trevino and Austin Wells. No surprise there, like we were mentioning. Rorvet was the odd man out. Happens, and the Yankees are going to roll with the two guys that they had pretty much behind the plate from mid-August on last year, more or less. Anthony Rizzo at first, Gleyber Torres at second, Anthony Volpe at short. Like I mentioned, John Birdie listed at third base. Your outfielders, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Alex Verdugo, and Trent Grisham. Should note also in there that, and it's tough because Giancarlo is listed, Giancarlo staying at DH. Aaron Judge, though, they want to have DH at least twice a week, the way it sounds. So something to keep an eye on there with that. Your utility guys are Oswaldo Cabrera and Jahmai Jones, which is where that third base comes into play a little bit. Jahmai does have a little bit of third base experience, although he's predominantly been at second base his whole major league career when he's been up in the majors. Does have some third base experience in the minors, so I know he's a righty bat, Kyle. I don't know if he'll necessarily start over Oswaldo today if John Birdie can't get to Houston in time, but it's a little wrinkle in the plans potentially there with Framber on the mound being a lefty for Houston, so put that in the back pocket. Your starting pitchers for the Yankees to begin the year, Nestor Cortez, Carlos Rodon, Marcus Stroman, Clark Schmidt, and Luis Gil. How about it? The guy who I was kind of banging the drum for a little bit because this is not something I've talked about a ton on here. It's been a lot of just with like friends and stuff like this, but like the Yankees can't have it be a two-way street about holding on the prospects or not wanting to pay guys. One or the other's got to happen. So I'm happy that, I know he's coming off of Tommy John. It's been over a year since he's pitched in the major leagues, but, throw him into the water here, and if he's going to sink or swim, we'll find out. Your relievers, Clay Holmes, listed as the main closer. Obviously, we know how that kind of goes in baseball now. Clayton Beeter and Nick Birdie, the two that made the roster out of spring training. Caleb Ferguson, Victor Gonzalez, the two lefties. Ian Hamilton, Jonathan Losaga, and Luke Dreamweaver are your Yankee roster for opening day as of right now. Pretty interesting. I know we were kind of talking at one point, Kyle, that Luke Weaver might be the opening day starter, even depending upon how it was looking a couple weeks ago. But familiar faces, some new faces in there for the Yankees. Not a true roster turnover, I would call, from last year, but you could definitely tell that it's a different look of a team going into 2024 than we saw in 23 for them.
Yeah, not having Tommy Kahnle definitely hurts too. Obviously, he should be back not too long from now, but yeah, it's kind of weird seeing Clayton Beeter in there. Nick Birdie, he had a great spring, so he deserves it. But then they're going with two lefties. The Yankees didn't do that a whole lot last year, other than when they had Nick Ramirez and Wandy Peralta at times. Right. But yeah, they usually stick to mostly righties, so that's kind of interesting. And then when Kahnle does return, is Beeter the odd man out, or is one of the lefties that? I just don't see how either one of the lefties could be sent to AAA, and I'm not sure even about their options anyway. I doubt Victor Gonzalez has an option. So
no, I don't even know if Caleb Ferguson has any left either.
I don't know about Caleb Ferguson much. So yeah, and then Luke Weaver in the bullpen. I was kind of surprised when they brought him back in the offseason anyways, and I think they're paying him like $2.5 million. So it's just kind of weird to me. I think they could have done better. I think they could have made the bullpen a little bit better. It seems like for the bullpen they kind of went a little cheap.
Well, I think Weaver's kind of going to end up being that swing guy this year. That if you need him to start, he'll start in the spot, and if not, he'll be your kind of long-ish guy. I wouldn't say a la Michael King. Probably not the right
Yeah, it's
exact
Jonathan Loaiza
use. Right, yeah, but Weaver start. I thought he looked. To be honest with you, I thought he looked really good his last spring outing too, which is kind of the weird thing. I don't know. Bullpens with me always get weird now. I just feel like you can kind of start with what you kind of get going with, and then you can swap guys in and out. It's not the best look, I know, but it's kind of, I think, the way baseball's kind of gone. The Yankees in 2024, I don't know if, I hate kind of carrying over the same thing from last year to this year, but like it definitely feels like a bit of a crossroads now officially for the team. Like I mentioned, it's definitely clearly a different look overall compared to last year. Am I wrong with saying it? It's only because I feel like I don't know. I feel like the Juan Soto deal and bringing in Alex Verdugo kind of makes me say this in a way. It kind of feels like a little bit like not your father's Yankees in a way. Like there's a bit of a what I would call FU kind of feel with them this year in a sense. I mean, those are obviously those two guys are kind of they go about things differently, but I heard various complaints about both oddly from people who had a similar chord, and I think the main thing they both said was like, oh, they don't fit the Yankee mold. I'm like, but what is the Yankee mold anymore for anything, right? In that sense. So for me, the way I view the Yankees this year, I kind of view it a little bit as a crossroads, and not maybe in that culture sense. I think it's more just, and I hate phrasing it like this, but we're in year, I guess it would be technically 8 of Aaron Judge. This is when if you're not in your prime, you're getting into your prime in terms of mileage on a player. I hate to kind of put it like this, but I'm going to. This was about the time I started having some questions about Mike Trout formally. In a sense of like, what's the leadership like? The culture like? Will we ever see this guy get a title? And again, I hate doing that to Aaron Judge in this way, but that's how I kind of view the Yankees this year. And I'll stack it on top of this before I get over to you, Kyle. I hate viewing things in a championship or bust mindset only because it's you need everything to line up right to get a championship in sports now. And it doesn't matter what sport. We've seen it across the board. I mean, not knock on them, but the Diamondbacks made the World Series last year. You know what I mean? You literally have to have everything going right at the right time just to even have the opportunity to go and win a championship when it matters the most, when it's the only thing that matters. So I hate doing championship or bust on a team at this current stage. But if the Yankees go out there and perform like they did last year, I don't necessarily say you tear it down, but you better be ready to have some sort of demolition process happen. And I hate that's the mindset to go into this year that I have with like the crossroads in that element with the Yankees. But I feel like that's the only fair and proper way to kind of go about it.
Yeah, what scares me is the pitching this year. Last year, you saw the offense a lot of times didn't show up and help the pitching. I think it's going to be the opposite this year. I think the offense, because they went out and grabbed Soto and Verdugo and Grisham and, getting Birdie. I think they had some great additions on offense. But the pitching scares me. They're basically betting on Nestor Cortez to stay healthy and return to that 2021 form. They're betting on Carlos Rodon to bounce back. I get it, it's only spring training, but at times that didn't look very encouraging. And then they're betting on their young arms, like Luis Gil. I like that he's a fifth starter, but innings is probably going to be a problem with him. He's coming off Tommy John. Clark Schmidt, he did take a step, but is he going to continue that? And then when Clayton Beater's up, if he gets a start, or Luke Weaver, do you really trust those guys to, help lead you to a World Series? I just felt like they should have added another arm to the rotation. And if they weren't going to do that, that's when you make your bullpen very strong. Because we've seen times where in April, they're constantly using their pen because their starters can't get past the fifth inning. Well, don't you think that might be an issue again based on who they have in that rotation right now?
Yeah.
Like today, do you think Cortez is going to go over 4 innings? I don't. Even though it's only his first start, he'll probably be 75, 80 pitches at most. And then if he gets hit around, he's going to be out. And then look, game one, your bullpen's already in full use. And remember, if Loizaga pitches, they're going to use him for 2 innings, and then he needs 2 days off. That's how they're using him this year. So you take him out of the equation, you're looking at some of these arms. Do you trust them to kind of carry you? I worry. I worry about this pitching. I hope I'm wrong. I think the offense needs to lead the league in runs scored and home runs for this team to have a legit shot at the World Series. I get it; they're probably going to make moves at the trade deadline, but we know when the trade deadline is 3-4 months from now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like they're kind of I don't know about betting necessarily on the price on players is going to go down, but I look at the Dylan Cease deal to the Padres, and I mean it's kind of funny. Drew Thorpe was in that deal as well, but his price didn't seem all that high, and that's what I meant on the Luis Gil side of things, where it's it can't be the two-way street of you keep your prospects and you don't pay people. The dam has to break somewhere. And I hate saying it all the time like this, but 98% of the time these prospects don't pan out to what you think they're going to be. That's just the way it is. I remember, to go back to Aaron Judge, and we're in year 8, I thought we'd be sitting here probably at this time in 2017 when him and Tyler Austin got called up, or I guess it'd be 2016 technically, so I apologize. We would be probably having this conversation more about Tyler Austin than Aaron Judge. Got to be honest with you. And look how wrong I was 8 years ago. Right? That's just the way it is. So, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's like I said, I don't necessarily think it's do or die, in championships, right? But if we're sitting here in the end of September and aren't talking about the Yankees getting ready for the playoffs in some way, shape, or form, then there's got to be if it didn't happen this offseason, that look in the mirror has got to be happening. It's got to be happening.
The thing, too, is when they found out the Garrett Cole news, yes, he has a knee Tommy John, but you would think there'd be some more urgency with adding an arm. I don't get it. I know he's starting on the injured list now, but they couldn't even give Michael Lorenzen a 2-year deal and paid him how much is he making? $5 million?
It's not a ton. I know that.
Yeah, they couldn't even he's not an elite pitcher, but he's something that can give you an option if there's an injury. I just thought about this. If Cortez or Rodon go down with an injury, what are you doing? You're plugging Luke Weaver in the rotation, okay, but then you're taking an arm out of the pen.
Right.
Or are you calling up from AAA that you're going to trust?
Well, I was going to say, I think at that point, then you have to go out and sign somebody. At that point, it does become who's left in terms of free agency.
Dennis Santana, I guess.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
opt out in
even
July.
then, I'm thinking though, it's okay, it's Noah Syndergaard,
yeah,
and I don't. Can I just say this? Nobody's going near Bauer in all of Major League Baseball. Please let it go, people. There's a reason why people aren't signing him. Come on. But yeah, I mean, do you burn an option on a guy, or do you just bring a guy up so you can just DFA him in 2 weeks and then he's off wherever? I don't know. That's why I feel like they're betting on, say, a guy like Shane Bieber being really cheaper down the line or something like that. And obviously this is New York baseball, but we talked about this last week on Fresh Takes. I see Cleveland being in control of the AL Central this year. I can't imagine Cleveland moving on from Bieber if they're on top or at least contending in the Central. I just don't see it. So who knows? Who knows, really? That's the ridiculous part about the current state of the Yankees. Speaking of ridiculous current states, let's go over to the Mets here. Let's begin with their opening day, or, well, what would have been their opening day roster anyway, if they were going today. But now tomorrow, your catchers are Francisco Alvarez and Omar Narvaez, Pete Alonso at first, Jeff McNeil at second, Brett Beatty at third, and shortstop Francisco Lindor. Outfielders are Brandon Nimmo, Tyrone Taylor, Harrison Bader, and Starling Marte. Designated hitter, DJ Stewart. More on that in a second. Utility men of Joey Wendell and Zach Short. Starting pitchers, Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, Adrian Hauser, Tyler Megill. Relief pitchers, he's back. Sugar Diaz, Edwin Diaz in your closer slot. Adam Ottavino, Drew Smith, Brooks Raley, Michael Tonkin, Jorge Lopez, Jake Diekman, Yohan Ramirez, and Sean Reed Foley, coming back off of what's been an injury-plagued 2 years, including Tommy John for him. So good to see him get a shot back at a major league roster. The Mets, like I mentioned, let's begin with that DH spot because I mentioned more on that in a second. DJ Stewart gets the nod at least at the start of the year for it. And that was the name that you actually, when we last talked about it, Kyle, said that who you would bet on at opening day. I was still leaning Mark Vientos. Really surprised that he got optioned to Syracuse, especially after kind of just getting what ended up being bulk of his run at the major league level last year in terms of playing time. But how long was that DH spot going to be on to DJ Stewart? The Mets go out and sign in the past couple weeks. J.D. Martinez, late spring arrival for him, so he's actually starting the year down at Syracuse with us locally here. So make sure, I know Syracuse is home this weekend, but we'll get to that in a second. So J.D. Martinez is waiting in the wings at DH. DJ Stewart gets it for now. I would imagine DJ Stewart probably still remains on the roster in some capacity when J.D. Martinez gets going, so it's going to be an interesting situation for the Mets, I'd say, to handle that. But we'll pop to the lineup added late in spring training, and that puts the Mets, to me, in a spot overall this year where I don't necessarily think it's doom and gloom. And I'm probably overall in the minority on this. Do I think they contend for the NL East this year? Probably not. I'm not that naive. I think that's probably going to come down to the Braves and the Phillies. I know it's a chalk answer in that sense, but you look at that, Kyle, right? Probably going to be the case, right? Not off base by saying that?
No,
Okay.
I agree.
I have a feeling, though, the Mets contend for a wild card spot. I really do. I think that there's more than enough talent there to make a postseason push. I can't imagine a team that has Francisco Lindor on it, that has Pete Alonso on it, that's frankly, who I view already as a top 10 catcher in the league, and Francisco Alvarez on it. You know, I'm, again, don't like doing it this way, but I'm betting Brett Beatty making the leap with having numbers under his belt now in that lineup to put himself in a good spot. Jeff McNeil and Brendan Nimmo, right? Not like they were going anywhere. I just have a hard time imagining a lineup like that not at least giving that team a spot or at least a chance in the playoffs. Now they're pitching. I'm a little bit nervous about that pitching. There's a lot of hope in that pitching staff, in my mind. A lot of hope. I think it's a really good bullpen, but that starting five, there's a lot of hope there. I don't know how great it's going to be.
Like the Yankees rotation, you're hoping.
I think it's a little bit worse, though. And I only say that because Jose Quintana, not a knock on him, but opening day starter in 2024 of Jose Quintana for the Mets, probably not what everybody was banking on 2 years ago. Right? And I know I go back to that point, but I think it's worth noting at that point where they got to get to this point, right? All the hope of last year came, frankly, crashing down, unfortunately, for one reason or another, mostly injuries, but, you know, underperforming and overperforming when it kind of didn't matter in a way. But, you know, the key factors right there, right? You kind of brought one up, Kyle, right? Luis Severino, right? Covering the Yankees, we know how good when Luis Severino was peaking, hardly anybody is better than him.
Yeah, and he had a 1 ERA in spring training.
Yeah,
Why
so,
is he not starting?
I
Quintana had a 6 ERA.
Right. So I don't know about that element of it. I'm not going to question it. But you know, your quasi 1-2 punch right now of Katana and Severino. It's sketchy. I actually love Adrian Hauser. I thought that was a great pickup. Kind of, I'll go ahead and say a bit of an afterthought in that Brewer rotation behind, what was Corbin Burns and Woodruff. So obviously not the case anymore in Milwaukee, which is kind of funny. That's who the Mets are playing for their opening series. I thought it was a great deal. I obviously though, the two biggest question marks for me: what version of Tyler Magle are you going to get, and what version of Sean Manaea are you going to get? And that's something that you even brought up right off the bat, Kyle, at the jump today, was like, especially on the Manaea front, like, we've seen when he's good, he's good. I wouldn't classify him as an ace-type pitcher, right? But he's a crafty lefty. He knows how to get people out. He's had they have an interesting couple years, though, of trying to figure it out, and hasn't quite seemed to figure it back out yet from when he was in Oakland. Megill, the Mets have seen when he's good, but when he's off, man, it's back off to Syracuse with you. So I don't know, and that's where I think that depth kind of helps out a little bit, right? They have Lucchesi down at AAA. They have Buto down at AAA. You'll get Peterson back eventually. Don't know exactly when that's going to be. You'll get Singa back. That path's a little bit clearer. But can those 5 guys kind of plug the holes in the ship until you get to like June when, you for sure probably get Singa back? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think maybe the reason why Severino isn't starting is because I'm assuming they're trying to split up the lefties. That seems like a thing.
I mean, it's a heavy lefty rotation for the Mets this year.
Yeah, and I compare them kind of to the Yankees just because I get it. They're not on the same level of pitching, but here's an example. Luis Severino, you worry about his health. Well, with the Yankees, you worry about health in their rotation.
Right.
And unknowns like Sean Manaea, what is he going to give you? Well, what is Carlos Rodon going to give you? See how I'm kind of comparing them?
Right.
Not talent-wise or, the same pitcher, just
you just don't know.
The unknowns and the health issues that these guys have had the last couple of years. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Luis Severino can pitch how he had a few years ago at the Yankees, and Jose Quintana, like I said, pitches like he did in the second half. I think they'll be okay, even if like Hauser and Manaea don't give them, great stuff, just quality innings at least. And McGill, he had a good spring. He did it. I guess he earned the 5th spot, but again, Jose Buto had better numbers. I'm not really sure why that was the decision, but whatever. If he can be a reliable 5th starter, I think they can kind of, like you said, kind of hold themselves above water until Senga gets back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, I don't know if I know Buto's service time is already kind of quote unquote maxed out for the full play that these teams do with guys. Like, that's the thing. I feel like Viento's got to be at the same issue. So I don't know why they're starting both at AAA. It's a question mark to me, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I know I'm probably in the minority expecting the Mets to be in playoff contention of some sort this year. And I get it, but I just view that overall element of at least in the batting side of it, like, there is just, to me, still too much talent there for them to not have some sort of shot down the stretch.
Got to get Starling Marte going, too.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big one. That's a name that I didn't even really bring up, and that's just because you think about it, it was a lost season last year for him through injury, underperforming, and it's tough, right? I mean, he was dealing like we said, there was a bunch of different injuries with him, mainly that quad. I think he also had like a core issue at one point. It's just one of those things where. Again, another guy, when he's on, he is really on. But, man, he just had a lost year last year. And so for the Mets, hopefully they can kind of get it right and get the course right for him. And we aren't sitting here in like a month or month and a half kind of going like, all right, what the hell are they supposed to do with that albatross of more or less a contract now? Because obviously, look, Cleveland did it, and they can get away with it, right? Because Miles Straw's not exactly getting paid a ton of money, right? But especially compared to like Starling Marte, right? Like, you can't put Marte on waivers and then hopefully stash him at AAA, right? And still have to pay him. I think Straw's getting paid like $15 million to play at Columbus at least to start the year, like something like that. So Marte, obviously, I can't imagine a team willingly pay somebody $20-something million to go playing AAA. So, yeah, it's one of those things where, both these teams are. I wouldn't say they're at the same point of the road, right? But for all things considered, I'm not putting doom and gloom on either of these teams. I think there are a lot worse situations throughout Major League Baseball to have a team this year. Here's looking at you, Colorado fans. I apologize in advance. I've been on the record. I'm going to say it here. I think Colorado is going to be by far the worst team in baseball this year. But
Oakland second worst?
I haven't really given it much thought. Honestly, I don't know. Is it a hot take to feel like I think there's a lot of overhype on St. Louis this year? I know we're going down a completely different path, but either way. Probably Oakland, though. Yeah, I'm not going to stray away from that, but I don't know. Oakland at least has some pitching that gets me excited. You know what I mean?
Angels are going to be bad, too.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah. All right, let's get back on track here. Let's talk about opening day for both these teams, the opening series. The Mets, as we mentioned, rained out today, so they're going 3 games, Friday, Saturday, Sunday against the Brewers. Friday at 1:40 first pitch. It's Freddie Peralta against Jose Quintana, 1:40 on Saturday. That's D.L. Hall, part of the I guess he was the main piece going back to Milwaukee in that deal for Corbin Burns. Against Luis Severino, and then 1:40 on Sunday, Colin Rea against Tyler Maygill. Kind of weird saying the opening 3 probable pitchers in that matchup, and really the only one that doesn't surprise me in some way, shape, or form is Freddie Peralta, and I would have probably projected him to be the number 2 or number 3 game starter if you were to talk to me, say, in November of 2023. So it's an interesting look for this series. Milwaukee's in a weird spot right now. I know Garrett Mitchell's out to start the year, fractured his hand. They still have some talent there. I don't think they're going to be as bad as a lot of people say. I think that's maybe me being optimistic, as we can clearly tell potentially here. That being said, I think the Mets get 2 of 3. I really like the matchups against what's been a very fluky Colin Rea. Obviously, that's game 3 in this scenario, but, D.L. Hall didn't really live up to the expectations with Baltimore last year when he was in the majors. I guess the past 2 years, because he was up at the end of 22 with Baltimore. So, and a couple lefty arms going in that deal. I mean, Freddie Peralta is the only righty going for Milwaukee. I really like that matchup for the Mets. They can kind of stack bats on the right-hand side a little bit better, obviously. I think the Mets get 2 of 3 here. Get off the season on a nice jump and a nice foot. I know, obviously, it's a bit of a damper, no pun intended, that today gets rained out for them, but I really like the matchups for them in this series against Milwaukee. It was only supposed to be 3 games anyway, so now you just kind of settle into a typical 3-game straight set. I'm going to go 2 of 3.
Wow, so we agree here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, 2 of 3. I like the Mets being at home. If I remember correctly, they had a pretty good home record last year, but struggled on the road. Obviously, that needs to change this year for them to have that chance at contending for a wild card. I do think they're going to be better than people expect. Don't think the division. Think wild card's possible. I think they'll at least be in contention going into the first few days of September.
All right. Love it. So, for the Yankees, 4 games in Houston. So, today, 4:10, Nestor Cortez, Framber Valdez, we already talked about that one. Do you have it up? Do the Astros have their other pitchers announced yet?
I do.
Okay.
Not for Game 4,
Okay.
but Christian Javier tomorrow and Hunter Brown.
Fantastic. That's what I was kind of figuring, but makes me wonder then about that 4th day. JP France, maybe? I don't know. Either way. So it'll be tomorrow night, 8:10, Rodon against Javier, and then Saturday, 7:15, Stroman against Hunter Brown, and then to be determined against Clark Schmidt, 2:10 on Sunday, Easter Sunday for that. I don't know. I don't know if you're going to disagree with me here. I get a sense of a 2-2 split on this. A 4-game series to start the year is weird, admittedly. Hey, look, I don't know how you feel about them, Kyle, this year. I think I'm a little bit down on the Astros, admittedly, this year, and a lot of it has to do with their pitching, actually. Uh, you know, it feels weird saying this. I think the Yankees start off 0-2 and then win the final two of the series in a weird way. Uh, Obviously, in theory, I hope I'm wrong, and like the Mets start off 3-0 and the Yankees start off 4-0, but that's just not how baseball really operates. So, but I think it's a split. I think you're going to see probably. Um, I don't know about pitching battle today, but I'm a big Framber Valdez guy. I've been on him now for a few years, but kind of prior to this year, one of my fantasy darlings from a couple years ago when he started really getting on and really getting on the scene a little bit more. I feel like after that for Houston, it gets really rocky really quick until whatever version of Verlander kind of comes back. You know what I mean? So I just view it as the Yankees. Look, it's a tough opening week for the Yankees, right? 7 games in 7 days. I think if they get out of Houston with a 2-2 split, they'll take it, and I'd be pretty thrilled with that as well. So that's why I'm going with a 2-2 split.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think now because I didn't really have a thought. Yeah, I'll say a split. Do you think they win today? Interesting stat. The Yankees are 5-1 under Aaron Boone on opening day.
Really?
Yeah.
I think they drop the first two. I think they lose today and tomorrow, and then they win Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah. What scares me with this Astros team is, well, we know their offense, what they can do, but the bullpen, adding Josh Hader is big.
Tell you what, though, Presley's looked rough in the spring, though.
Brian Abreu, we've seen how good he's been. So basically, if you're trailing in the 7th inning or later against this team, it's going to be very tough to come back. And hopefully the Yankees don't do what they did last year. Remember, they didn't. I think they had maybe 2 or 3 comeback wins in the 9th inning all year.
Right.
They struggled to come back because their offense was that bad. Should be different this year with the bats they've added, and hopefully that's the case. But yeah, it can't be trailing in those late innings.
No. All right. Quickly before we get out of here, Rochester and Syracuse, they also begin this weekend. They begin tomorrow, though, officially on Friday. What's interesting is, kind of as always, they begin the AAA seasons with matchups kind of close by. So Rochester at Syracuse this year to start the year. Rochester, some notable names on the roster right now. Now, minor league rosters aren't officially due until tomorrow, so there might be some movement here a little bit. I have to preface it with that. Some notable Red Wings on the roster: Yohan Adon, Luke Farrell. How about this one? You ready for this one? Robert Gesellman.
Former Met
as well, Steven Nogasak.
Oh, my God.
Jackson Rutledge, he'll begin the year at AAA. One of the top pitching arms for Washington, as is Amos Willingham. And Thaddeus Ward, left-handers TJ Zuck, Joe LaSorsa, Lucas Knowles, Matt Cronin, Tim Cate, and Richard Blyer will begin the year at AAA. Catchers Brady Lindsley and Drew Millis, 2 higher-rated catchers in the system for the Nationals. Infielders Jake Alou, Darren Baker, Jack Dunn, Carter Kieboom, and you ready for this one as well? Juan Yepes, over from the Cardinal organization. Outfielders Travis Banghorn, Alex Call, Cody Wilson, and Jacob Young. So, Rochester's a lot of familiar names there. Do want to note, kind of caught me off guard, but Darren Baker not on the 40 man. Feel like that might change. And a name that I thought was going to start the year at AAA, it seems like he's going to start the year at AA again this year. I think we'll see him, though, in Rochester by summer. Is James Woods, the outfield prospect for the Nationals. Would expect to see him in Rochester by summertime. For the Mets, notable guys on their roster, obviously we mentioned Jose Budo, but Kyle Crick, even though I think he's beginning the year on the IL. Shintaro Fujinami, who the Mets brought in for depth. Reed Garrett, Grant Hardwick, Bryce Montesayoka also will begin the year on the IL, but he's nearing a return. Eric Orzi, Cole Schulzler, and Mike Vassell. Left-handers Josh Walker, Joey Lucchese, Nate Lavender. Catchers Tomas Nido and Austin Allen. Infielders Luis Angel Acuna, who we know came over in that Texas deal, younger brother of Ronald Acuna. But good to see him start the year at AAA. I know there was discussion about would he be at AA in Binghamton or AAA, but he'll get up to Syracuse to start the year. G-Man Choi.
Why didn't he opt out?
It's a good question. I think the man just likes playing baseball, so he's just happy to be here.
Luke was quickly out the door.
Right. I saw G-Man taking swings from the right side of the plate, too, so
Ooh.
that's interesting. Jose Iglesias, also a name that didn't opt out, but Luke Ritter and Yolmer Sanchez will join Mark Vientos and Wyatt Young as well in the infield. Outfielders Carlos Cortez is back. Brendan McElwain will have the whole year at Syracuse, as will Joe Swayze. And then Ben Gamble and Trace Thompson also neither opted out of their deals. They will start the year at Syracuse. And as I mentioned, J.D. Martinez, who if you go onto the Syracuse Mets roster site, has his Toledo Mudhen headshot as his headshot. So as you can tell, it's been a while for J.D. since he was at AAA. Game times, if you're able to get out. I know the weather's supposed to be decent-ish up this way this weekend. Friday 2:05, Saturday 1:05, and Sunday 1:05 over at MBT Bank Stadium in Syracuse. So you can get out and go there. Both coaching staffs remain predominantly intact. Rochester brought everybody back, obviously led by manager Matt Lecroy. Dick Scott managing in Syracuse with predominantly the same coaching staff a couple tweaks there, but we already talked on that a while ago. So looked like a really good season ahead for both these teams. Looking forward to having, obviously, we have some top prospects either beginning of the year as we see at Syracuse or should be on the way at Rochester. So always good to see the stars of tomorrow today, as I call it, and guys who are still looking for one more opportunity come back as well.
Yeah, and it would be nice if the AAA teams this year were more competitive than they have been, at least have winning records. But, pitching always is an issue in AAA because of all the movement.
Yep. So that will do it for Concrete Jungle for this week. We'll mention normally how we do about this Monday, Thursday. Won't be Monday next week. I will be traveling back from Virginia on Monday, so look forward to that. But we'll be back again for sure next Thursday. We'll recap the opening week, stuff like that, preview the weekend ahead, and then we'll get right into our regular season schedule. Can't beat it, Kyle. Look forward to another fun season with you at the helm here and discussing some New York baseball.
Yeah, 162 games. Love it. Hopefully they never shorten the season. Love the everyday, turning on a game. So, yeah, can't wait. Let's go.
All right. So you can find us here on YouTube, Spotify, and other major podcasting platforms. Check us out there. Hey, the FL1 Sports TikTok. Check us out over there. Like, share, subscribe. Happy opening day, everybody, and opening weekend, depending upon when you are watching and listening. We will talk with everybody next week.